Now, after Endgame, Spider-Man has really been the linchpin of the MCU, both in terms of box office to reception. While the MCU really hasn't found its legs, Spider-Man has thrived. Today I'll be recasting those villains of Spider-Man within the MCU. This is the last video in recasting the MCU and the Avengers, and since I've already recasted Spider-Man's full roster other than the MCU in previous videos, it just makes sense to circle back for one last time. But before we get started today, I'd like to thank today's sponsor, Surfshark. Now, Surfshark is a VPN that allows you to protect your data from it being breached, which is great. But if I'm being honest, I mainly use it to change my IP address so I can watch things that aren't available in my country. Like if you live in the States and you want to revisit some of those classic MCU films on Netflix, well, sorry, you're out of luck. Or you can change your IP address to Canada and watch the MCU without paying for Disney+. And the great thing about Surfshark is it allows unlimited devices. So use promo code BrianSeeker to get 83% off and 3 months extra free. So check the link in the description below for more details. As for the castings today, Spider-Man hasn't had a lot of villains in the MCU, but he's had ones that really packed a punch. So for today, we're casting Mysterio, Vulture, Shocker, and Prowler. So let's recast the Spider-Man villains in the MCU. First up, let's do Mysterio. Now, love or hate Jake Gyllenhaal, you can't deny it, the man has a charm. One that the MCU definitely leaned into. I think he does really well in this role, but as many people say, it's just another Iron Man villain origin story. Now, if I were to change it, I would want to go darker and definitely a more mysterious vibe. That illusionist, which is less based in stark tech. I want someone who has that almost Houdini vibe. That's why I went with Aidan Gillen, who has that air to him and feels perfect for Mysterio. He's got this sly nature that has shined through in many of his roles, and it would help sell his illusions in that air of mystery.
Always keep your foes confused. If they don't know who you are or what you want, they can't know what you plan to do next.
So Aidan Gillen as Mysterio. Next up, we have Shocker. Now, in Homecoming, we kind of have two Shockers, and neither one of them really leaves a lasting impression. I feel like there was a really missed opportunity with this character, one that definitely could be changed. Now, with Shocker, he usually has less of a hatred towards Spider-Man, unlike most of the villains within the universe. He's largely concerned with his image and just making a living, and behaves with much more of a naturalistic, professional manner. I want someone who can really lean into that everyman vibe, and someone we can really understand why they're doing these acts of crime. I went with Sam Worthington, who I think works really well as an everyman, but also can bring that intensity in the fight sequences. I can definitely see him pulling off that professional, yet fighting Spider-Man out of the situation, rather than looking for fight.
It's the last door. I'm going through it. You can help me. Just get out of my way.
So Sam Worthington as Shocker. Next up, let's do Prowler. Now, Prowler might as well not be cast in the MCU. Donald Glover, who, yes, is amazing, is kind of just thrown in there to be a little ode to fans, to remember when Donald Glover was almost Spider-Man himself, as well as just alluding to Miles. His role doesn't really expand beyond that, which is cool, and I can definitely see Donald expanding on this role, but at a certain point you wonder if they're going to recast. Now, I love what they did with this character in Spider-Verse. I love his down-to-earth vibe, which is understandable and almost seems street level, and I want to go in line with that. Now, Mahershala Ali is definitely the best choice here. He actually voiced the character into Spider-Verse, but he's already Blade. That's why I went with Aldous Hodge, who yes is going to be Hawkman, and I did briefly have him as my choice as Black Panther, but I think he has that street level persona I'm looking for here, as well as this gentleness yet strength that is really hard to comprehend. I think he's got a great presence for this role. I can see him playing that uncle who has a real love for Miles, but almost has a little bit more of a harsher side.
Hey! You need to calm down. You are scaring my daughter. Now, if I were you, I would go to your sister's place. You don't need to be here right now.
I think he could do really interesting things here. So Aldous Hodge as Prowler. Lastly, we have Vulture. Now, Michael Keaton absolutely killed this role, even though it is the third time he's played a wing character. But if I'm being honest, I want to see more of a comic book accurate version of Vulture. Michael Keaton works so well in the MCU, but there's almost this slimy, kind of off-putting nature that Vulture has, and I really would love to see. Now, everyone knows the typical choice here. John Malkovich has been attached to this role ever since the original Spider-Man trilogy, and although he's perfect, I'd rather look elsewhere. I end up going with Ian Hanmore, who is best known for his role in Game of Thrones. I think he has that right creepy, off-putting nature, which feels like it was taken directly from the comic book pages. I think it would be drastically different, and wouldn't work in the version of Homecoming they have. But man, do I think he'd work in a different continuity, and one that would work incredibly well within the Sinister Six.
They missed their mother. They want to be with you. You will be with them. through winter, summer, winter again.
So Ian Handmore as Vulture. So there is pretty much the entirety of the MCU done. We do have some side characters left, but I'm going to be moving on to a new recasting. So let me know in the comments below what your choices are for these roles, as well as what I should do next. A lot of people asking for Aragon, which I have yet to read, but I'm definitely interested in tackling. Let me know in the comments below, as well as thank you so much for watching. Please subscribe, and I'll see you in the next video.